Rise and grind, sunshines. Welcome back to Hamza's Advocacy. I'm Leo, your host, and today we're going to go a different direction, I'd say, because here lately we've been going over the rules and procedures, and I want to follow up with something that just happened with my case. And before I get started with my case, I want to talk about something else, actually. Something that's been in my mind all morning. As I was running this morning, I came to myself and I asked myself, what is my secret to everything that I do? How do I get myself up every morning at the times I get myself up at? How do I make myself do the things I want to do even though I don't want to do them all the time? And a lot of this is part of a revelation, a self-revelation. And one thing we have to do is be honest with ourselves. So what I'm getting to is that, I was able to admit to myself this morning, I'm angry. That's my secret. That's my secret sauce. And really, that's everybody's secret. Everybody in this world is angry. Somebody has anger for some kind of reason. Now, angers are different because you have unsuppressed anger, which is emotional unintelligence, lack of emotional intelligence, and then we have suppressed anger. And that's where people presume themselves as being emotionally intelligent. And there's very few of those that actually have that suppressed anger, that are emotionally intelligent, that really have self-control over that anger that they have inside them. And so those ones that do have it suppressed, that do come off as emotionally intelligent, that don't react, that only respond to things, some of those people could be very dangerous. They could just be bottling that anger up, and they could be putting it in the wrong spot and using it in the wrong way. And that's one thing that, and how I came to this realization was because my whole life I've been told I'm angry. I still get told that to this day. And it's true. I'm angry about a lot of things. And there's some righteous anger, and there's just some uncalled for, unrighteous anger. But what the goal is to do is to reach inside yourself, start asking yourself these questions, start figuring out ways to contain this anger, use that anger as a tool and not a weapon, of course. As I said before, you want to be a warrior in a garden and not a gardener in a war. So you take this anger, the first war starts from within, and you become emotionally intelligent. You control yourself. You don't try to get rid of the anger and bury the anger. You talk to the anger. You talk to the unexpressed emotions and feelings. You become one with those unexpressed emotions and feelings. You start talking to the heart. You start talking to the mind. You start talking to the soul. The mind and the heart have to connect with each other for you to be able to even talk to the soul. So start talking to your heart. Start talking to your mind. Take down them walls. We all got barriers and walls around our hearts. Okay? Same thing around our minds. We're stuck in this little box. We've all been indoctrinated. But that's my secret. And so now I know what my secret is. Now the next step is to, as I've said before, I've taken this anger in a sense and I've tamed that anger. I tamed that dragon. However, it's not fully under control yet. It's a process. And this process comes with discipline of the body, discipline of the soul, basically discipline of the mind and discipline of the body. Because when you discipline the mind and the body, the soul becomes free. We don't have to discipline the soul, in my opinion. We have to, like the Bible says, it says we have to beat the flesh into submission. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't read the Bible. Okay, that's fine. You don't believe in God. You don't have to read the Bible to believe in God, in my opinion, in my belief. That is this, that it wasn't God who wrote the Bible. And the Bible itself is not a book. It's a collection of letters and notes, and so it's a collection of things. It's a library. The Bible is a library, okay? And you don't have to believe in God, Allah. You don't have to believe in Yahweh and Yeshua and Jesus Christ and all these different, there's so many names, there's 99 names in the Muslim religion for God, and there's I don't even know how many are in Christianity, Catholicism, and so on. But ultimately, there is a creator. And if there wasn't, everything wouldn't be so as so. There obviously has to be a creator because everything was so finely tuned that if anything was any different, I mean, think about gravity. If gravity was any stronger, we would all implode on ourselves. If the planetary systems weren't so mathematically tuned, they would crash into one another. Everything would cease to exist. Oxygen wouldn't be what it is. Our bodies wouldn't be what they are. We have a lot of doctors out there that say the body is always fights itself, eats itself, and the autoimmune diseases essentially. And well, as true as that is, it's not completely what they say it is, because the body eats itself. Well, it eats its cells. Autoimmune disease. It eats its cells because there's one thing to understand in chemistry. It's you have alkalinity and acidosis. Okay, so when your cells are accumulated with acid, you'll have the so-called immune system come in, the T cells and the B cells and so on come in, and they'll go and eat they'll eat at your body, quote unquote, what the doctors say. They'll eat these cells, but the reason they eat these cells is because they're full of acid. They're acidic in nature. So they eat these cells. These cells get broken down into metabolic waste, which is cellular waste. That cellular waste gets flushed through your lymphatic system and goes into your lymph nodes, and your lymph nodes has macrophages. These macrophages go ahead and they break down everything even further. The acids, macrophages break down the acidic crystalline structures. So everything is so finely tuned. There's so much going on, even inside of us, that we don't even clearly understand. And everybody's so indoctrinated, and we got to use this anger that we have, this anger we have to put this fire back in our furnace, and we have to fight the good fight. Okay, we have to fight the good fight, and the good fight is not for just ourselves. The good fight is fighting for others. It's for fighting for our brothers and sisters, for fighting for our children. Okay, for fighting for the future. That's what the good fight is. So it's okay to be angry, but use it in a way that's going to benefit the world, okay, and benefit the future. All right. Anyways, I'm going to move forward from this because, well, I'm going to talk about the motion to dismiss that was filed. As I already mentioned, I believe, I already knew they were going to file a motion to dismiss, which is failure to state a claim. And this is pretty typical. They're going to say I failed to state a claim based on, I don't have the motion to dismiss here, but they wrote out a lot of different counts and how I failed to state a claim. They said I didn't file the proper evidence, such as the lease violation and other things, emails, lease violation, etc., etc. Well, the reason I didn't file these is because the clerk told me not to file any evidence yet, that I would put it or admit it all into evidence when I go into my hearing or my trial, whatever it may be. Okay, so that's okay, because I wrote an opposition to the response of a motion to dismiss, and in so doing I created Exhibit A through Exhibit E. So created 5 exhibits. Exhibit A was the timeline. I created a whole timeline from, well, I created a timeline from June 6th all the way up until I sent I believe it was the intent to sue. There's more to the timeline than that, but I made it very clear. It's about 3 pages. And then B was the affidavit I sent to, well, Mercy Housing, Danielle Fravel. And then C was the corresponding emails. And then D was the, intent to sue, I believe, and then there was another piece of evidence I incorporated into there. But I was happy about the motion to dismiss because I already knew what they were going to do. I knew what their plan was, so I was already ahead of them. Well, long story short, they sent me everything, and they said I have a case. They said we have a hearing on. Well, they said I have a hearing. When was it? It was November 15th, and then they asked for the hearing to be moved up, which it was. It was moved up to November 5th. And so now I have a hearing in the next few weeks, which I'm also more ready for as well. And what I brought with me today to read is, so basically I have some oral summaries, some case arguments in return for that motion to dismiss. Basically, when I get in there into the hearing, I'm going to have to try to convince, well, not try, I will convince the judge to dismiss the motion to dismiss, to overturn that motion. And here's how I will start. I have many different ways here. I broke it down into so many different structures here to just give myself a fighting chance, well, some practice as well. Okay, so so what I first wrote is, Your Honor, this case arises from a retaliatory lease violation issued by Mercy Housing and its agents on June 6, 2025, after I lawfully asserted my rights regarding my private vehicle and documentation. I filed this action because I was subjected to false allegations, ongoing retaliation, and emotional distress that have impacted both me and my family. So count 1, breach of contract. Mercy Housing breached the implied covenant of good faith and the fair dealing in my lease by issuing a false and retaliatory lease violation, acting contrary to the trust and fairness expected in a landlord-tenant relationship. Count 2, defamation. Defendants Melissa Taylor and Terry LaBounty made false written and verbal statements accusing me of threats and bullying. These statements were baseless, damaging my reputation and standing as a tenant. Count 3, retaliation under the Fair Housing Act, 42 U.S.C. Section 3617. After asserting my housing rights, I faced retaliation. The Fair Housing Act prohibits intimidation or coercion against any person for exercising their rights, and this lease violation clearly meets that standard. Okay, so count 4, violation of retained rights under the Ninth Amendment. The Ninth Amendment protects rights retained by the people, including peaceably enjoyment of one's home and the right to assert lawful property interest without retaliation. The defendants infringed upon these rights or those retained liberties. So that is what's very important. It is my life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness to be able to drive without a license if I wish. That is what the Ninth Amendment is about. Okay? If you have not read the Ninth Amendment, you should go read the Ninth Amendment. It is very powerful. So we got count 5, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The defendant's conduct, false accusations, delays, and disregard of my good faith efforts to resolve matters caused severe stress, duress, and emotional harm to me and my family, including my fiancé, a veteran, during and after pregnancy. So my relief sought here, I respectfully request the court order Mercy Housing to withdraw the June 6th lease violation, issue written apologies, and grant monetary relief of $50,000 based on stress, duress, fraud, and damages. This case is not just about money. It's about accountability and upholding the rule of the law for all the parties, including tenants who act in good faith. All right? So here's something else I also wrote too, because I want them to understand this isn't just about money. This is about accountability and protecting tenant rights, not just money. This right here will bring you across as being creditable, okay? And this is something the judges respect. So the plaintiff, myself, seeks $50,000 in compensatory damages for stress, duress, emotional suffering, reputational harm, and the ongoing hardship caused by defendant's retaliatory and fraudulent actions. Okay? This figure represents the cumulative impact of defendant's breach of duty, acts of bad faith, and willful disregard for plaintiff's rights and dignity as a tenant. The amount reflects an estimation of actual harm sustained, not an hourly calculation. All right? So it's just not about money. It's about them being accountable, being held accountable for what they have done. Yeah, they're going to have to pay me for my time because you know what? I have stepped out of my way and I have done some of the most, I put everything to the side. I'm an herbal guy. I love herbs, man. And that's what I want to do. I want to start an herb company. But now, you know what? These corporations are going to mess around and infringe upon our rights, and not just my rights, but people who served this country and did their job. I don't know how many years ever they served. 4, 6, 7 years. I don't care. You're going to mess with these people, you're going to mess with me. Alright? You're going to mess with these people, you're messing with the Constitution. Alright? So, it's time for me to stand up and go ahead and do what I don't want to do until I can do what I want to do. Alright? And there's this conversation I've been having with people lately about, well, this isn't everybody's path. You're right. This isn't everybody's path. It sure in the hell ain't my path. Okay? I don't want to be a bar card lawyer. I don't want to be an attorney at law. Okay? I don't want to go and do these things. However, you got the millennials and Generation Z or whatever they are. I'm probably saying that wrong, I think. But whatever. People my age, okay? People my age. Our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents allowed this system to get to where it is. They allowed this country to be where it is today. Complete turmoil. Tyrannical turmoil. Okay? So, what we have to do is we have to stand up and we have to all fix what our ancestors did over the last 3 to 4 generations. Okay, so right now we're going to have to do something we don't want to do, and eventually everybody can get back to doing exactly what they want to do. We got to start learning these laws, these codes, and all these different procedures, and codes of conduct, and all these different things. And we got to start turning this stuff around on them and hold them accountable, because we the people are the power. So this may not be our calling. This may not be what we want to do, but it's what we should do. We should gain the responsibility to have the ability to respond. One of my favorite things to say, we should have the ability to respond. Right now, people don't have the ability to respond. But if we stand up today, our kids aren't going to have to deal with this. Our grandkids aren't going to have to deal with this. Our great-grandkids won't have to deal with this. It's time to take over. It's time to take our power back. It's time to become the beneficiaries again and put them back in the fiduciary positions. And if you don't know what that means trust. That's trust law. And everything is a trust, either a tangible or intangible trust. Okay? So yeah, again, this isn't what I want to do, but this is what I have to do. I absolutely have to do it. And if I want to go and open up my own herbal hospital, guess what they're going to do? They're going to try to fight me. Why? Because herbalism is frowned upon. Why? Well, because they have taken herbs and they have isolated the constituents in herbs. And what does this do? They inject them into rats, and rats gain ailments. They gain what they call diseases, or what I call diseases. A disease is something that's an imbalance in the laws of nature. You can't, God or the Creator, as we spoke about, has taken this plant and grown this plant with 1,001 constituents, which is just phytonutrients. Phytonutrients are minerals, and you got minerals. You got water consoluble constituents. You have oil consoluble constituents. Okay, and basically, and you have alcohol soluble constituents. And basically, what they have done is they separated and isolated these constituents. You got one here, one here, one here. But the Creator took all this and alchemically put all these constituents together and made this one plant called vervain, or they put this one plant together and they call it mullein. They put it together and they call it plantain, or they put it together and they call it comfrey. Comfrey is one of the biggest ones that they went ahead and they made illegal in the 60s because they isolated the constituents and injected it into rats. The rats developed cancer. Okay? You can't do that. Everything is in the plant together synergistically to balance itself out, okay? And this is what we have to do in society as an organic being, as an organic system. We are the cells of the earth. We have to work together symbiotically, okay? We have to come together symbiotically, and we have to coexist, and we have to work efficiently, okay? We're meant to work together, not against each other. I know these are just my little rants, but there's reason for these. Okay? I'm going to read another one. If there's a motion to dismiss, essentially a failure to state a claim, I would say, Your Honor, the complaint properly pleads facts that, if taken as true, state valid claims for breach of contract, defamation, retaliation under the Fair Housing Act, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Each count identifies the duty owed, the specific breach, and the damages that followed. Illinois law requires only notice pleading, not detailed evidence at this stage. My allegations are specific, detailed, and tied directly to recognized causes of action under both Illinois law and federal law. Therefore, dismissal is not appropriate, and the case should proceed to discovery where the fact can be proven. Now that I read this seems more appropriate for the motion to dismiss than the other one does. But, carrying on. Count 1, breach of contract. Your Honor, the release carries an implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing by issuing a false retaliatory lease or retaliatory violation, I guess I could say lease violation. Mercy Housing breached that duty. The complaint clearly alleges the contract, which is the lease, the duty, which is good faith, and the breach, false violation, and the damages is stress, harm, and housing record financial loss. That states a valid claim under Illinois law. Count 2, defamation. The complaint alleges defendants Taylor and LaBounty made false statements that I threatened and bullied staff. These statements are defamatory because they accuse me of misconduct that damages my reputation and housing record. Illinois law recognizes defamation per se, where false accusations of harmful conduct are made. I have alleged the statements, the falsity, the speakers, and the harm. That is sufficient to survive dismissal. And then we have count 3, retaliation. Fair Housing Act, 42 U.S.C. Section 3617. Don't forget that, especially if you rent from a company that has anything to do with subsidized living, okay? Anything to do with HUD. Always remember your fair housing laws. I mean, everybody has a full fair housing laws. It don't matter who you're renting from, really. You have the Equal Protection Act, and yeah. So look into this. 42 U.S.C. Section 3617. Okay, 32 U.S.C. Section 3617. The Fair Housing Act prohibits retaliation against tenants who assert their housing rights. The complaint pleads that I asserted my rights, and in direct response, defendants issued a false violation. This is the very definition of retaliation under Section 3617. Okay? The statute creates a private right of action, so this claim is properly before the court. Okay? And then we go on to count 4, violation of retained rights, U.S. Constitution Amendment 9. Your Ninth Amendment is very powerful, as I keep saying. The Ninth Amendment preserves rights not specifically listed in the Constitution. Did you hear that? The Ninth Amendment preserves rights not specifically listed in the Constitution. So the right to travel without a license, without plates, is a right under the Ninth Amendment, even though it is not specifically listed in the Constitution. Basically, your religion is what you believe and the way you act and the way you move, okay? Your religion is not just some faith and some faith under Christianity, Catholicism, Judaism, under so on, okay? Your religion is who you are. It is what you believe. And if you believe that it is your religious right to drive without a license, to have your vehicle registered to your trust, okay, that's your right to religion is the First Amendment. Freedom of speech, right to religion, and freedom of press, and so on. And so, basically, this right here, this even backs it up even further. The Ninth Amendment preserves rights not specifically listed in the Constitution. So even though those things are not listed in the Constitution, you have what is listed in the Constitution that you can use is your right to religion. And if you say this is your religion, they can't stop you. They can't stop you. And you can go ahead and take this all the way to the Supreme Court. And people should. Okay? Again, we're trying to carve a path for the future generations to come. So they have some more sense, some more intelligence in them than what we have today. Alright? So here I asserted my rights to peaceably enjoy my home and lawfully manage my property without retaliation. Defendant's conduct violated those retained rights. Whether or not this court views the Ninth Amendment as independently enforceable, my allegations of retaliation and deprivation of lawful rights state a constitutional issue and should not be dismissed at this stage. Okay? So count 5, intentional infliction of emotional distress. This is known as IIED. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. The complaint pleads the defendants knowingly issued a false violation, ignored good faith attempts to resolve the matter, and prolonged the uncertainty. This conduct caused severe distress to myself and my family, including my fiancée during and after pregnancy. Illinois law recognizes IIED, intentional infliction of emotional distress, when conduct is extreme, outrageous, intentional, and causes severe distress. I have pled each of these elements, and that is sufficient for the claim to proceed. In sum, each count identifies the duty owed, the specific misconduct, and the damages suffered. At this stage, the court must accept these allegations as true. Because the complaint states multiple valid claims, dismissal is not proper, and this case should proceed to discovery. Okay? And I will say that as I read these, I have copyrights over all this. I'll steal my stuff because this is what I will be putting to use here very soon. This is my, but you can use it. You can use it. Just don't take it and say it's yours, okay? That's all. Just don't take it and say it's yours. I'm not gonna take it and say it's mine. Nothing is mine, and nothing is nobody's. Everything is everybody's. Okay, so let's see. I'm trying to find. Oh, here we go. I got a couple good ones here. I got some really good ones. Vehicle registration argument. Okay, so I put this together because one thing that I'm going to come across is my vehicle I am expecting. Your Honor, the lease violation is based on my vehicle registration, but that cannot lawfully be used against me. In Murdoch v. Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court held that no state may convert a right into a license and charge a fee for it. In Shuttlesworth v. Birmingham, the court said, if the state does convert a right into a privilege, the citizens may ignore the license and exercise the right of impunity. My reliance on these precedents shows there is no willful violation here. Under Marbury v. Madison, the Constitution is supreme over the conflicting state law. Therefore, this lease violation based on my private vehicle is unconstitutional, retaliatory, and void. Okay? So, that is a beautiful one to know. Always look into Murdoch v. Pennsylvania. Read that case law. Shuttlesworth v. Birmingham. Read that. And Marbury v. Madison is one of the most important. That's from 1803. Marbury v. Madison. Don't forget that one. Okay. Honestly, I think this is going to be everything for today. Oh, you know what? Here's another thing they might try to get me with. When it comes to lease and the vehicle registration, they might try to tell me that I have signed a lease and I agreed to the conditions under the lease, which is cool. They can say what they want to say. They're not going to go ahead and entice fear or instill fear in me. So, Your Honor, I signed my lease without prejudice, reserving all rights. So, if you don't know what without prejudice, go look at UCC 1-308 without prejudice. Okay? UCC 1-308. Okay? This means I cannot be compelled to give up constitutional protections or private property rights through the lease. The landlord's reliance on lease language to enforce a false retaliatory violation is not enforceable when it conflicts with higher law and fundamental rights. The lease cannot be used as a weapon to punish me for asserting my rights. Okay? So, bam. I have prepared so many counter arguments for these people. I even wrote a code of conduct for myself, actually. I like this. I know I said it was going to be done, but why not? I will uphold the integrity of the court by being truthful, organized, and respectful in all proceedings. I will avoid any words, tone, or behavior that could appear disrespectful or emotional. I will listen attentively, speak only when permitted, and maintain composure under pressure. I will trust that fairness and diligence guide the judiciary, and I will meet that standard through preparation and patience. 5. My purpose in court is to seek justice, not conflict, and to demonstrate that we, the people, can participate in justice with dignity and honor. That's my code of conduct. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to live by that when it comes to what I'm doing. So there was here's another one. So I said, they're going to say something about the fact that my vehicle, under their lease, is required to be registered to the state, which is unconstitutional. They can't make me do that. That's why I signed without prejudice. I always sign everything without prejudice. Everybody should sign without prejudice. Reserve your rights, okay? It's that simple, by endorsing. The same thing as purchase. To perform, you must endorse with a special a special required endorsement. And so, anyways, we'll get into that sometime. Let's talk about another thing in my lease that they're going to try to get me for, because one thing they ask is that we go ahead and they demand that we tell them that we have a trust. Well, I'm not telling you I have a trust. I'm not legally obliged to tell you I have a trust, okay? So, my private estate planning is not relevant to this case. This case concerns the lease agreement, not any trust or financial planning I may or may not have. Rent can only be set or increased based on the lease and applicable law. The existence of a trust does not create income, nor does it alter the terms of my lease. Their argument is arbitrary and retaliatory. So the judge may ask why I said no when I was asked before about the trust. I will say, no, I said no because my private estate planning has no bearing on the tenancy. A private trust is a confidential matter, and I am under no obligation to discuss or disclose it to a landlord. So my key point here to emphasize is a trust is not income, and it is not grounds for raising rent. Attempting to use private estate planning against a tenant is retaliatory and irrelevant to the issues before this court. Okay? So I've really thought about everything I possibly could, and I'm going to use it against them. And so those are the two things in my lease that they might try to get me for. Another one, actually, they might try to get me for. I wonder what that's at. I don't know. Well, that's something, actually, I just thought about. But one thing they might try to get me for, because I told them I don't work. Technically, I'm a student worker at the community college, and I make a little bit of money here and there and basically that's for my tuition. It's not a real job, okay? And then what I don't receive, it gets taken out in child support. Child support also takes from what I get from that. So yeah, I have a good fight on my hands. I have a really good fight. And then actually there was a letter that was left on everybody's door. I did tell everybody that Melissa Taylor had left the company, and she left a letter on everybody's door, actually. And this was October 3rd, 2025, which was her last day. It was a Friday. She didn't leave a letter on my door. Well, this letter dated October 3rd, 2025 was written and distributed by defendant Miss Melissa Taylor to all residents of Cannon Place, excluding the plaintiff. The letter contained statements characterizing residents as angry, hateful, and miserable, while portraying the author as a victim of the tenant community. The tone and content of this letter demonstrates a pattern of bias and hostility towards residents, including veterans and families, and appear to serve as a preemptive defense for prior misconduct or retaliation. The omission of the plaintiff from distribution further supports the claim of targeted treatment and exclusion. This exhibit is presented to establish Defendant Taylor's motive, bias, and retaliatory intent, as well as to illustrate the hostile environment perpetuated by Mercy Housing staff. Boom. I think that was like the cherry on top. And I think that's all for today. So, today, I implore you all to go and at least try to find out who you are, to find out why you are angry, to find out why you wake up every morning. I implore you all to go and fight the good fight, to make a better tomorrow. My Hamza's advocacy, my slogan is, today's fight, tomorrow's future. Okay? I think it's one of the most beautiful things that we can think about. The future. Without the future, we would cease to exist, man. And really, there's no future. The future tomorrow is today. So just keep fighting today. Just think about today. Don't think about tomorrow. Just wake up, grind, shine. Who cares if you're tired? Who cares if you're exhausted? Who cares if you're hungry? Just grind. Grind, grind. Work hard, work smart. Be intelligent. Stand up for other people. Okay? Stand up for yourself. Let's do this. Okay? Trump talks about making America great. Well, let's make the citizens great. Let's make we the people great again. It's a pretty nasty term, I think, to use, because America truly was never great. It hasn't been great. I mean, our Constitution oust a certain group or categorization of people. Wrong. Our Constitution originally benefited slavery, which was absolutely wrong. So America's never been great again. But the people have been pretty great. If the people weren't great, we wouldn't have gotten this far. The people always stood up and fought for something they believed in. Okay? We can't stop doing that. That's all today. We're at 37 minutes. This is definitely the longest video. I hope you enjoyed. Peace. Have a blessed day. Hamza out. Inshallah, alhamdulillah.